shoestring, I'm forever in the loop. And squad up, baby, I'm forever with that group. And that chopper put them hula hoop holes through your coupe. I'm all about the guap, my hustle is the truth. Papaya on my mama, miss you like a loose tooth. And ever since you left, ain't been right with the group. And I still check on mom's, miss your name in the booth. And your sister had a baby, I just got introduced. Like last week at the mall, I was shopping for boots.
Okay. What's up? What's up? What's poppin'? Hey, it's NateDoggSac916 coming at you live from Sacramento. Man, y'all know what it is, man. Hit that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell, man, if you want to keep seeing this fire content. And you guys already know, if you're looking for the merch, look in the description. It'll give you the links for the shirts, for the leggings for your girl, the purse for your girl, the onesies for your baby. Whatever you're looking for, it's in the description. Tap in or don't. It's good. But today, yeah, I'm not even finna get into no long stuff. Without further ado, man, we've been waiting for this for a minute now since I started my channel. What they call you, where you from, bruh?
Yo, what's cracking, everybody? It's your boy Big JD right here, coming straight at you out of Prison Break Raw. You can catch my channel on YouTube as well. Prison Break Raw, Big JD. Sitting up here in Oklahoma City right now, man. Born and raised in Southeast Los Angeles, California. Born and raised and ran around all up in North Orange County, Southeast Los Angeles area, all up in that CDC system, right, since '93 all the way through to the late 2000s, and then caught me a federal case, of which led me up here to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Caught me a hot bank robbery out here, and yeah, I've just been here ever since, like naked and afraid, man. The federal government dropped me on the streets up here with $38 and a shirt on my back, and that was it. Okay, built a life for myself, man. Yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, let's be clear, man. Y'all know who he is, man. It's Big JD from Prison Break Raw. Once again, you know, make sure you tap in if you're not already tapped in. He not politically correct. He not playing no games. He not pussyfooting around. He says, using his words, slapping you in the face with the dick of reality. So if you're not ready for no real shit, don't even go over there. You know what I mean? But if you want to hear some real stuff, and I like watching this channel, go tap in, hit that like, subscribe, and notification over there as well. But like you said, man, first of all, thanks for coming on, bro. I appreciate you.
Oh, you much welcome, my brother. You know, you family, man. You know what I'm saying? And
appreciate that.
And you know, I've been rocking with you ever since Sandman introduced me to you. And you know, yeah, you've been on my show, and
I think you were the first show I went on. After Hurt, you were the first show I went on after starting the channel.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate that, man. And I've been waiting to get you on mine. But of course, you know, we do what we do. Like you said, family, it don't matter. There ain't no limit with time. It's just yesterday and now. That's what we doing. You know what I mean? So bottom line, like you said, you came up in Southeast Los Angeles.
Yes, sir.
You know, as a kid, like the household, what was that about? What was that for you? You know what I mean? Like mother, father, mom, brothers and sisters. What was that like for you?
Well, I didn't grow up in a broken home, you know. And a lot of people that grew up like in my environment, whether it be because, you know, I like to call myself like a nomad.
Right.
For a long time, you know, before I actually became like officially known as like a righteous gangbanger and shit, I was a tag banger.
Okay.
I guess you could say, you know what I mean?
Okay, so
and
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my mother and father, you know, both mother and father were in the picture, and you know, but we didn't really have a whole lot. We didn't have a whole lot of money. My father was a dock worker. You know, he was making, you know, back in them days about $14, $15 an hour. So that put us just above like the poverty line.
Right.
But you already know, in the eyes of the way the federal government and everything determines poverty, this is the one thing that I've been trying to stress a lot lately, because, you know, families and stuff will get government assistant homes, you know, help with rent and stuff like that. we could never get that because my father, his gross, and this is why I call it, you know, a gross miscalculation of the family income.
Right.
Is they go according to your gross. So if you gross X amount of dollars, they look at it like, well, that's how much you make, so you should be able to cover all your expenses. But as we all know, your gross is not what you take home. Your net
Right.
is what you take home.
Right.
So I like to call it like a gross miscalculation of income, and then you're caught in the net of being just straight fucked. So your net, what he gets, was much less than what his gross was. So we were always struggling with the bills and everything. You know, we had to have our grandma move in with us. We were all crammed into a condominium for a very long time.
Okay.
Me and my two sisters. I don't have any brothers. So that made it for like the community that I grew up in as a younger kid to be exposed to a lot of the bullies and a lot of the abuse and a lot of the bullshit that goes on around the neighborhood that I was living in. So I had to grow up fighting.
Okay.
And I grew up fighting. I grew up, you know, pretty angry at the world. It's like you would see like a lot of the richer kids down the street with all the nice shit and everything, and like I didn't ever have that. So I of course, you know, just like any normal kid would do, you know, you're gonna want what the next kid has.
Right.
You're gonna try to get it by any means necessary. So I started getting into you know, exploring avenues of crime. I remember I like to tell people like how I first got exposed to it was my favorite movie of all time when I was a little kid was a movie called The Warriors. You know,
Warriors,
and that movie had a lot of had a lot of significance for me, man, because
right.
you know, I looked at them as like they were an underdog. They were an underdog, you know, group that everybody hated them, everybody's against them. They had to battle their way through everything to get there. And as you can see, I'm also a Raider fan, and Raiders were, even ever since I was a young kid, you know, my father was a Rams fan.
Right.
So, and my grandfather was a Raiders fan, and my grandfather described it to me as like, he said, well, the Raiders signify, you know, the poor working class man that everybody steps on, because the Raiders, you know, originally coming out of Oakland back in those days, Oakland, California was well known for having a lot of working class men working in the steel mills and the warehouses and stuff like that. You know, Oakland was a big, like a working class community for a long time, you know, and my grandfather, you know, he had lived up in Oakland and places like that. So he was a diehard Oakland Raiders fan. And even when they got to Los Angeles, even better because he was down there. So I had a chance to go to the Raiders games with him once in a while, and then also go to the Rams games with my father. So I kind of like liked both teams, but I always leaned more towards the Raiders because it was like symbolic for me to be the underdog, the black sheep, the one that everybody can't stand. So, you know, I grew up like that. I grew up as a misfit. Kind of running around with other misfits, yeah.
Right. So eventually, like your street stuff, the stuff you're doing, like you said, you were doing whatever it took, you know, by any means to provide, should we say,
yeah,
for you and your sisters or whoever you were providing for. Eventually, this led to an affiliation, right?
Yeah. Well, see, it didn't like, it kind of wasn't a smooth transition into all of that.
Oh, okay.
Because, you know, there was other like such misfit kids and stuff that I had grown up around and been around. Like, I tell people, you know, all the time, you know, don't get it twisted. You know, a lot of people like to call me all kinds of different labels and shit all the time just because I won't subscribe to their brand of political viewpoints or whatnot. But see, I grew up hanging around with all kinds of different kids. Like, most of the white kids and stuff that were around me were like the richer brand, the type that was like had more money, had more resources. You know, they'd always have nicer things and stuff, and I would always clash with them.
Right.
So I always found myself like you know, being lumped into the category with like, you know, poor Hispanic kids and you know, poor like black kids, African American kids, you know, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
And you know, I even had a couple of like, you know, poor like Filipino or Korean friends, if you could believe it. Like some Koreans like back then,
right.
We're talking like the early 80s and shit. We're still, you know, some of them were still migrating to this country. You know, Korean War was still, you know, about 30 years away from this time.
Right.
So some were still coming here and were, you know, trying to work their way up to find that American dream. So I had most of my friends were all of various different races. So I grew up being exposed to like many different households, many different cultures, you know.
It's actually a good thing to grow up like that. If you really think about it, you get a better view of the world and how different people react to different stuff.
It is, because, you know, some of these like white kids and shit that, you know, grew up with money and stuff, you know, they've turned out to become like skinheads or whatnot later on, or,
right.
you know, kind of into that walk of life, or jocks and shit. And, you know, I just never fit in with them. I just never could fit in with them. Like, I always looked at as trash. And I always try to tell people, you know, regarding this big thing nowadays where people talk about white privilege and stuff like that, is what they don't realize is, you know, the one big thing that I learned that I've known all these years is I cannot sit here and tell you or anything like that what it feels like to be a black man in this country. I don't know that.
Right.
I'd be lying if I told you that I knew what that's like. But at the same time,
right.
Yeah,
I know
but
what
at
you're
the same
about to
time,
say. Go ahead.
Same exact time, nobody who's black knows what it's like to be poor white trash growing up in this country and looked at even lower down on the totem pole, because in a lot of richer white people's minds, they look at black folks as like, well, you know, that's their destiny. That's just what they're meant to be. So they look at it, they put this label on it. But when you get white people that can't make it or are just like struggling to make ends meet, they look at you like garbage. Like, you know, you're a mistake, you're a disgrace and stuff like that. Yeah, and I tell you, yeah.
And I don't know personally, since you brought that up, I don't know if personally, and this is only my own thought process, if when people say and speak about white privilege, I don't think that, like, my homeboy down the street that's white and grew up in my neighborhood is included in that same white privilege. You know what I mean? I don't think that, and I really don't like subscribe to a lot of the bull crap. Like, I don't get involved in a lot of the political stuff. You know, I mean, you know me, I do me. I stay in my lane. I don't worry about what nobody else is doing. But I kind of figured like you were gonna say something like to that. And the thing is, like, most of my homeboys that are white, they not white. It's like, they're not white. If you put it in parentheses, if you understand what I'm saying, it's like, as far as that aspect of it, it's like, you just a dude from the hood. Like, you just Chuck. I'm Nate, you Chuck. We homies. It's good. It's not like, oh, you get different treatment than me, because you will get pulled over and harassed in my neighborhood just the same way I'm gonna get pulled over and harassed in my neighborhood. You are, but not dude riding the Benz with the button up in the specs. He not. You know what I mean? But he is, because he looks just like me, just a lighter skin tone. He doing the same stuff. Banged out tattoos, same gear, all the stuff. It's the same get down, just like you. You may have be Caucasian by birth, but you're not a Caucasian. You're not a Caucasian in the sense of the word like that. You know what I mean?
I like to call it, I like to put it to you like this. You have white people with the capital W.
Yeah. And
you have white people with the lowercase w.
Okay.
You know? And I'm the lowercase w one. See, and another one is, you know, I get these social justice types coming at me all the time with their nonsense. Dude, they got a whole book of backup counter actions to anything you say.
Right.
You know, it's like you can't say anything to any of these people that are on that level, right? You know, not to really knock, like, you know, left-leaning people, because, you know, I'll explain to you that I got some left-leaning ideas of my own, but I'll pretty much explain it to you as we go on. But the one that I always hear is, well, you could put on a suit and a tie and you can, like, clean yourself up and cover your tattoos, and you can go out into white America and be accepted by, no,
No, you can't.
no.
No, you can't.
Because here's the thing. Upper white class society knows their own.
Yes.
They
Absolutely.
knows their own.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing. It's like you could put on the best suit. You could do whatever you can do to get up in there. It's just like if you learn how to speak Spanish fluently.
A real Spanish-speaking American,
yeah,
a person.
Put on the local clothes, get all dressed up, and go down to the deepest part of Mexico. They're gonna know you're a foreigner.
Yep, facts.
They're gonna know you're a foreigner right off the rip.
Facts.
So
that's
these
like,
people,
if we all put on button-up suits, all of us, we could put 50 people in a room of different racial groups, and put everybody in the same outfit, and the cats from the hood or the cats who've been about that life and in prison and all that stuff are gonna be able to tell who's the difference. They're gonna tell, like, oh man, he a homie. Yeah, I mean, you can tell by the way we walk, talk, act, all that. You know what I mean? It's like, just because your skin color is white don't mean you can fit in white society, in upper class white society. You know, you're gonna stick out like a sore thumb. And they gonna definitely
because I remember once upon a time there was this country club that was down close to where I grew up, and I had gotten a job there, because I've always like freelanced in landscaping, throughout my life, and I was much younger when this happened, and I remember, I was walking through this country club going to work. It was like the first day that I was there, and I was probably about 16. And I remember stopping in the parking lot, and I was sitting down on the curb, and I was smoking a cigarette, and somebody had driven by and seen me, and the next thing you know, the cops rushed up on me. So it's like, people are like, well, how does that happen? If I'm just a white kid, how do the cops get called on me, and how do I get put on the car?
Right.
And,
what made you that guy?
Yeah, are you that guy that's been breaking into the cars yesterday? You had to have been, getting taken down to the local police station and fingerprinted and all that. My parents happened to come down and arguing with the cops, wondering why they keep harassing me, and them saying, well, your kid's trash, your kid's a troublemaker. So it's like, when people tell me these things, when people tell me these things, it's like, I have to shake my head and think, well, it's not necessarily clear cut and dry, because up in these same like rich communities, there were a couple of like very well-to-do African-American families, and you could tell the difference between those kids and the black kids that were down, like that grew up around where I was at. You could tell the difference, because they were, you could sit them side by side. It's like sitting you right next to Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Right.
You're already going to know that Carlton's been up there his whole life, but everybody's going to know that Nate ain't been up there.
Yeah, facts.
Mm-hmm. So that's the whole thing that I try to do with Prison Break Raw, is I try to break people free from their self-made prisons. I try to like shift the paradigm and teach people how to like develop their perception of things in a more objective way, as far as like understanding who you're dealing with, instead of like looking at your optics, what I like to call the optical illusion. Mm-hmm. You have to take the time to actually communicate with somebody to figure out more of like where they're coming from and what they're about, because everything ain't all black and white in this world, man. It's not the way people think, that everything is all black and white, and that's easy for them, because it's the same thing with people that don't believe in God, right? It's something that they can't see with their optics. Right. So they automatically dismiss it, and they call themselves an atheist. Okay. It's because they can't see it. Right. So they deny of its existence. It's the same thing with, most of these people that are atheists are also on the left. So I always tell people, like, you can't be on the left, you can't be on the right. You have to kind of like find your equal balance somewhere in the middle. Right. It's just like Buddha taught. Buddha taught in a lot of his earlier annals and stuff like that he tried the left path, he tried the right path. It was too extreme in both directions. So what he had told people, the middle balance is best. Right. And even the same thing in the stuff that I practice, like the Kabbalah and everything like that. We have what's called the tree of life, and it's within the tree of life, you have 3 pillars. And these pillars is severity, mildness is in the middle, and mercy. So you have to learn how to balance yourself in the mildness and learn how to use severity when it's necessary and mercy when it's necessary. Most people do not have that ability, and that's why it is the old saying that goes, the classic saying goes, that the path of the wicked is vast and wide, and many will travel, but the path of the righteous is narrow, and only few will travel.
Right.
It's the mysteries that most people just can't understand because they're deaf, dumb, and blind, and they must be led like a flock of sheep in one direction or the other, whether it be the right or the left. So for me, I try to be kind of like one who has the ability to restore that order and balance into their lives by providing them with all kinds of pictures and using the phonetics, the words, to actually make them experience a great deal of discomfort so that they could think about what their perception of things are.
Right. You slap them in the face with reality.
Slap you with that fucking straight smooth sausage of reality, man.
Whether they like it or
Wet
not.
Wet noodle of reality when you've already been awake for a little while and the hard-on's gone down, and it's a wet noodle.
Yeah.
If I'm slapping you early in the morning, it's with that morning hard-on of reality, man. Because and I try to be as crude and as out the box as I can, because I'm trying to teach you to think outside the box.
Facts. I get that. And yeah, and I always tell her that how your get down works, and it works. How your plan of attack, should we say? You know, you don't. A lot of people don't get the message when they're just hearing the same old niceties coming across. You know what I mean? But when somebody's like, man, fuck what you think, fuck what you care about. This is what it is. This is what's going on. You don't have to like it. It's still, that don't make it any less true because you don't like it. You know what I mean? And then that's when you get the people coming, you're this, you're that, like you said, when people come up with all kinds, yeah, okay. Yeah, I expect you to say that because a lot of people don't like dealing with reality. You know what I mean? So I expect you to be on that note. But okay, so we kind of got, into it, and I'm good because in any interview with you is a good interview to me. So you end up, I don't know, I forgot where I was at, but you end up getting involved with gangs at some point. I mean, like you said, you grew up, okay, I just came back. I remember you say you came up with a bunch of outlaws, basically. You just running around with the warriors, basically.
Yes, sir.
What do they call it? A bramble of individuals that were all against the rules, basically. And so eventually you ended up, I don't know if it became from incarceration or juvenile system or whatever, affiliating yourself with a certain organization.
Yeah, so I didn't never go into the juvenile system. You know what I'm saying? Like I was fortunate to avoid that. But so I come from, like I said, a blue collar, like a Teamster family, and I learned a lot of these same principles that like a lot of these hardcore, rough and tough blue collar Teamster dock workers from the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s that a lot of them come from the streets, So, I learned a lot of these principles about honor and respect and stuff, dealing with those matters, especially like I remember going back to when I was young, to where I had told on my sister for something. I said, Dad, Julie did this. And my dad just looked at me like, well, what does that got to do with you?
Right.
And my grandfather, slapping me in the back of the head, talking about, it's one thing to protect your sister, but it's another thing to snitch on your sister. You don't stool pigeon on anybody. They call them stool pigeons.
Right. I remember that saying.
He's like, I'm gonna tell you, kid, nobody likes a stool pigeon. And to be a stool pigeon is not something you want to be. And I remember like crying as a little kid thinking like, Well, my sisters tell on me all the time, you know, and he's just like, my grandfather, like I said, he's old school, and he wasn't with the whole equality when he's like, well, women get snitch all the time, you know, doesn't really make them a snitch, but a man never rats.
Right. Facts.
A man takes his lumps and rolls with the punches and worries about what he does and doesn't worry about what the next man is doing, period.
Salute to
so I learned
grandpa,
that. Yeah, so I took that to the streets, you know, and I started like that same mentality was with me and all my friends. And like one of my best friends, you know, was this kid. His name was Jermaine. I still remember his name. His name was Jermaine Wirehouse, and his family were all Inglewood family, you know. So he was a blood.
Right.
So I hung out with him when I was a kid, went to school with him briefly, and then he moved off somewhere else. And then we re-hooked up again later when I was about 13 and 14. And I was just coming out of the punk rock scene because I was all into like skateboarding and punk rock and anything to be rebellious and anything to like stick out and stand out, you know. So like I started running away to the streets, and I started hanging around with like all kinds of different people. Like, you know, I had my boy was a blood. I had two friends that were Crips. They were brothers, you know, and their whole family was from the Compton swamps. Right. I don't know if you ever heard of the swamps.
Oh, no, I've heard of the swamps.
Right. So I had them, and they were brothers, and they were friends, and they had a little gang up around the other side of Buena Park. It was called Payback Crips.
Yeah, I've heard of the Payback Crips.
Yeah. So they they were from there, and I had a little homie. His name was Danny Caps, and we used to call him just Caps. And he was from Payback Crips, so I hung out with them. But at the same time, I was also hanging around with dudes from a gang called Suicidals. Okay. And Suicidals was like I did a piece on that on my channel, the history of like the Suicidals and the Lads.
Prison Break.
The Suicidals were like, yeah. Prison Break Raw. Their Suicidals were like they were like poor whites, poor Hispanic kids that like grew up around Venice and spread out outside of Venice. They were involved in the punk rock scene, but they looked like cholos. Okay. You know, they had the buttoned up Pendletons, the slick back hair with the hairnets, and you know they'd wear like the Jap flaps or the like Converse and stuff like that, or even Doc Martin stuff with cut off Dickies and all that stuff. Right. So I used to kick it with them, never really committing to like any one gang or something, but I was just a kid from the streets. I was impressionable. So I could have gone in any direction. I could have went all up down there. I used to get on the bus and go all the way out to Inglewood. Right. And hang out with my boy out there and out there, up around like where Inglewood family ran around out over there, like by, out there by Centinela Park or stuff, out around the Forum and shit. Right. And, I'd hang around the other side of Buena Park. I'd hang around in various different places in the city of Norwalk and whatnot. So I was always running in the streets. I experienced a lot of things like as a runaway. I was lured into a trap, and I was actually kind of like kidnapped and held hostage by a bunch of...
It's like a full-time job, not a kill. Niggas still got niggas doing forever in the shoe. I'm feeling like a shoestring, I'm forever in the loop. And squad up, baby, I'm forever with that group. And that chopper put